welcome to the webinar, everybody. I'm Clive.
And I'm Louis.
And today we're going to talk about Smart Lean BIM.
Yep.
Well, the motto, we always start with our motto. This Smart Lean BIM is all about the right BIM at the right time, by the right people, but specifically for the right reasons. And a big part of what we'll talk about today is how you agree on that between the teams that are delivering and the owner. The owner is paying the bills. Very important that they get what they want, but one of the big challenges is there is a broad spectrum of understanding when it comes to BIM. So some owners are very, they know about BIM and they want to do it, and others maybe are just fresh to implementing BIM on their projects. So it's a really key combination of the knowledge in our industry that is able to deliver and what people actually need and what they want. So we're really interested in going through that in detail.
Yeah.
So today's agenda.
Yeah, the top 3 BIM requirements to agree with your owner. So as Clive mentioned, there is a broad spectrum of the level of education that the owners might have when it comes to BIM. And if they do have those standards all the way to down to not knowing what BIM is, you know, it's really up to us to help them educate on that. So it's not always leaving it up to the person representing their BIM side or the owner who's representing on that side, but it's really up to us to just help them get educated and know, okay, what is it that we really want to accomplish? So that brings up the first thing that we'll go through on this agenda is agree on the why. What are those reasons why we need BIM on this project?
Yep.
You know, what are the services that we need to achieve?
It really annoys me. It's one of my pet peeves where you'll have teams that get to the end of a project and there's a grumbling that we created something that the owner isn't going to use. And then you look at it and you say, well, we didn't even establish why we were doing BIM on this project. What are those uses of the model? And we didn't go through exactly what we should scope and how we should scope it with the owner. We brought in a consultant and maybe copied and pasted from another project rather than going through it with the owner, and specifically the necessary information that they might actually use.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about those 3.
Go for it.
Yeah. Just realizing we could talk for hours and hours about this, but let's go through the slides rapidly so we can dig into the how-to part as well. One of the big problems is that owners tend to see online that BIM can save them a huge amount of time and money. It spans right the way through the design, the construction, and in operations. But it's not just a switch. It's not just, I do BIM and therefore I get all of these savings. We know that there's a lot more to it. And there's a lot of documentation and literature saying that there's a huge amount of value in creating BIM. But let's talk about the elephant in the room. How do owners today request BIM? And we know, we were talking about in the lead up to the webinar there, if you were on, there are different levels of understanding of what BIM is, and there's different capability by many different owners around the world, whether they can actually use the output. Mm-hmm. So one of the big challenges is requesting something that could be useful. And so let's talk about how.
So how do they do it?
Yep.
Yep. Some don't.
Some don't. Some don't even care.
Yeah. Some don't care about it. Some just are not interested, and we still find ourselves doing BIM on the project for our own services or our own kind of comfort level when it comes to
gain efficiencies. Yeah, absolutely. So people that do BIM already would do BIM even if the owner hadn't requested it.
Right.
And that's because we have huge amount of efficiency in our workflow. And in that case, it would be helpful to present to the owner certain small bite-sized pieces from that could tempt them into requesting things in a later.
And sometimes they choose not to go with BIM because it's seen as another process or another add-on to the bid or the project cost. So sometimes their reason isn't because they don't want to do it, but it's because they think that they can't afford it.
They might have had that bad experience in the past where they said, let's have some BIM please, and then that has not been defined very clearly. And then they end up in, well, BIM is actually not something that I want to ask for. So that's number 1.
Number 2, they say, BIM, please.
I'll have some BIM.
Yeah.
Could you please?
Let's do it. Looks good. I've seen those pretty renderings and 3D models, and and let's go for it, you know?
So it's just like a thumbs up. So what problems could that cause if somebody just says, yes, please?
Yeah. Well, if we don't plan it right, well, how much? Then, you know, what?
Again, yeah, why? Why are we creating the model in the first place? So we'll cover some of that. When you have an owner that just says, yes, please, then we know what questions to ask them. We talk about plain language questions so that we can unpack that. What is the actual requirement? Is it for full-blown from end to end, including all of the information requirements, they're going to manage the facility right the way through? Or is it that they're looking for a pretty 40 schedule that they can share with the stakeholders? There's a big difference in that.
And then there's the owner who just read up on BIM and said, we need LOD 500 because it's going to save us a ton of money down the road for construction, for FM purposes, whatever it is. We need it. We want it now.
We absolutely must have everything and the kitchen sink. We want LOD 500 plus COBie and everything that BIM can be. We want it. We want to load it up and we want to go to LOD 600. We need BIM 8D. And when it comes to that, you've got an owner that's very excited about BIM. They want to do a lot of BIM, but we need to harness that. We need to help them to specify what actually could be valuable. Otherwise, they might end up in one of the first one, which was they'll go to the next project and they'll say, I don't want to do that BIM thing again because it just cost me a lot of money. And it was a pretty 3D model that I could spin around, but what was the end result?
And just like the second option or the second reason, it's you still need a good plan for this, you know, so it's definitely something that you need to go through and consider what you're going to require for LOD 500 if that's what they're asking for. So definitely come up with a good plan for this one, which we'll kind of brush up on in a minute.
Yep. So the fourth one is we've got a very informed owner. And they are able to specify exactly what they need. They have smart, lean BIM goals. They have attainable, they have something that's documented. They have something that actually they might be able to use if it's actually provided to them in the right way. So those 4 different ways of an owner asking.
Probably someone experienced, or what we've seen, you know, they have a consultant on board
Getting help.
who's, you know, guiding them through. So if you're in this situation, it's not a bad thing. It's a really good thing to have clear information, but just make sure that you understand that information as well. No matter what that BIM execution plan looks like, you really need to have that clear scope for yourself.
And and the rest of the team.
Right.
Yeah, so all of the different companies that are working. So we had a poll, and it was really interesting to hear the results. And we thought that we would share these results with you today. And just kind of going through a reveal process. So out of those 4 answers, we can see that there is a majority in the blue and the red. So let's unveil that. First of all, we saw 37% nearly of teams did not have any discussion with the owner about BIM and about their BIM requirements, which, okay, if there is 0 requirement, then everything that you share and everything that you get efficiency from can benefit them as well. And that's okay. But they say BIM please, nearly 50% of owners without any more definition is just a request. Yes, I've seen something about BIM. I love BIM. Let's do BIM.
That's good, but
as we said, you have to harness that excitement and actually make it into something. If you have an owner that is excited but doesn't even have the resource to put on that and have that discussion, it can also end in really, really powerful outputs that then actually don't get used.
Yeah, I've actually seen one of the comments. Someone wanted BIM, so might have been in this 50% or 47%, but they didn't realize the additional cost to it. So, you know, this is a really good reason why we need to educate them in the beginning.
Help them understand the purpose and tie it to the scope and make it actually useful so that people aren't doing too much and then spending too much money and actually the outputs aren't useful. So the third, we can see, and let's reveal, oh no, well, slide fail. So you can see there that the third one is requesting basically everything. And then the fourth one, unfortunately, that 1.8% is how you are asking for smart requirements. And so owners asking for smart, lean requirements is only 1.8%. And that's really the challenge. That's the challenge because we see that there's so much BIM going on in the industry, but we don't have the teams we don't have the owners in a way that are able to request that. You made an update to the slide?
Yeah, so you have to update it if you want.
Okay, let's move on.
Yeah. Well, the last one was 1.8% are actually clear with those BIM uses or their BIM plan on their project. So
they have smart objectives. Yeah.
Right. And 1.8%, that's not a lot.
Not a lot.
We want more. We want more of those type of clients and owners and even consultants who are well organized.
Helping teams, helping teams to increase that percentage so that more informed owners are getting better requirements. But unfortunately, even that 1.8% are trying to implement in some form like this, where you have, whether it's the contractor or the owner or some part of the team asking and saying, I want BIM. And then there's a convoluted set of different and disparate and disconnected systems that are trying to capture those requirements. And that is a challenge as well. We understand that. And outcomes from that workflow, if you haven't defined it, how do you know what success looks like?
What was it that you were trying to achieve? You didn't define what the model should look like. You can get any variety of a model from any trade.
That one on the left looks nice.
Yeah, but I needed the one on the right. So, we're not going to be aligned. We might have an unhappy client at the end where we overproduced and the budget was high, or we underproduced for something that they budgeted, but we provided a model on the left. So unless that plan is very clear, we won't align expectation.
Right. So if you wanted just a basic model, but got a very detailed model, would you be happy? Well, probably you'd think that you'd be happy, but actually you spent so much more money and so much more time was in creating that, it was wasteful. And then you might not even be able to open the model if it's in too much detail. Yeah. It could be too much
time wasted. Big model.
So this problem, miscommunication, can be very costly. And in our industry, that is a huge, huge waste of time if we haven't specified, if we haven't planned that out. And we end up with not enough BIM. So we're looking for BIM. We put out that poster, where is my BIM? And sometimes we end up with too much BIM and it becomes a problem. It's a headache. It's really, really painful. And the result, the implication, it's confusion. It's blame. It's appointing. It's like if we end up in a project and there's not exactly what was required, we should do that.
Yeah, that's him. Gotta stand up.
If we don't get the end result that we thought, then there's the blame game that happens, BIM blame. And what we end up seeing is that because there's been a requirement that the owner usually says, I would like some BIM. And then the BIM is delivered in some way. And then the BIM is maybe not even used. And then there's teams that are complaining about the owner and the fact that they've created all of this information for the owner and the owner hasn't even used it. And I understand how frustrating that can be, but let's produce the right information. Let's not overproduce. Let's make sure that there is a customer for the end result so that we don't get this BIM blame. So should we talk more about how we can do that?
Yep, let's do it.
So the top 3 things we introduced earlier that we need to agree on with the owner. The first one is why. Why are we doing BIM in the first place? And we all, I think, have been understanding in project sense, what is the project? How complex is it? What are the constraints? Mm-hmm. What's important to the owner? Is it budget more important than schedule? Is it about the tolerance? Is it a nuclear plant that needs to be so accurate? Or is it about an environmental impact? What are the real concerns? Is it maintenance at the end of the day?
How could BIM help you achieve any of these complex situations that you have on the project? That's really the ultimate goal for BIM is what is it going to achieve for this project? And let the owner know what it is that they want. What is it for FM purposes? These questions are going to lead to ultimately to the BIM use. So always start with that end result of what you need, why do you need it, and then work your way backwards.
Exactly. Yep. You ask these plain language questions in order to get to to match the BIM uses that are going to answer and provide value to each of those challenges that you experience on a project.
Right.
And each project is different. If it's a casino, you really want to make sure that casino opens on time because there's a significant impact to any delay. So then we start to look at the BIM uses. So once you've gone through that set of questions, and we can really help you there. If that's something that you haven't got, then please reach out. There's a lot of plain language questions out online, and there's some inside of the templates that we share as well. But when you've talked to the owner, you can then start to match those and say, well, what are we going to do? Being able to see if we are going to do a design review with the owner, if they're interested or not.
Yeah, there's so many BIM uses that, there's Penn State has a good 25 BIM uses that.
They've been around for a long time, but they're fantastic.
There's many others also.
BIM dictionary as well. There's, let me guess, 70-something model uses. And so Bilal and the team there are developing some fantastic definitions and some useful terminology that you can use to agree on those.
There's really ultimately a BIM use option for any phase of construction, all the way from design, all the way to facilities, and even the marketing. So marketing, obviously, we need a 3D model to
We are
render,
very slow.
So yes, many BIM uses to choose from. So you want to cut and get into
let's do it. Let's get into the demo.
All right, we'll be back.
So the 3 parts to